Welcome. This is Raina Nice, your host of a Season of Caring podcast, where we share stories of hope for family caregivers, breaking through the busyness and loneliness of caregiving to see God even in this season of life. Today, I'm excited to introduce you to Joy Kotz. Joy is an author and speaker whose heart's desire is to help others know Jesus more. She has a passion for God's word and his people and longs to help others learn to live the abundance of eternal life now on this side of heaven. Joy writes and teaches Bible studies as well as speaks for ministry events and retreats. She's been married to her high school sweetheart for 30 years and lives in Northwest Indiana. She's a mama to 3 adult kids and a Mimi to 2 precious grandkids. In addition to writing, she enjoys reading, camping, and every moment with her family. Welcome, Joy. So glad to have you here today.
Thank you so much. I'm glad to be here.
Oh, I just have to say, those grandkids are the best, aren't they?
I said I had 2, but one is coming in the next 2 weeks. So,
oh, that's so exciting.
yes, we have a granddaughter, and our grandson is coming here in a couple of weeks. So, yes, very excited.
Yes, we just got a new grandson in December. They're so much fun. Well, Joy, share with us a little bit about what your caregiving season looked like.
When I saw your post about caregiving, I immediately thought of my dad, and I cared for him. It felt longer, but it was really only 3 months. He had injured himself, and he went to the doctor for a compression fracture in his back and ended up being diagnosed with congestive heart failure. In the midst of all that, he and my mom were divorced, and he lived alone. And so I became his primary caregiver in what ended up being the last 3 months of his life.
Wow.
Yeah. So not expected, even when he passed so soon, that even though he was very sick, it was still unexpected. But yeah, it took me off guard, but it was a good season as well, if caregiving can be a good season.
Yeah, it sounds like, too, that it was kind of surprising that you would end up in that role. And I think so many times when our parents or even when our loved ones are healthy, we don't really talk about, what's it going to look like if you need care? And so it sounds like that was probably a little surprising, too, that we went from an injury to this dependence and then actually walking him all the way home.
Yeah, we actually thought longer term, we would maybe have a home that could accommodate him if need be, but I knew that he would go kicking and screaming because he loved his independence and his house and his garden and all the things. But yeah, it did take us off guard a little bit. And, I shared with you a little bit about the whole kidney journey and just how God tucked that season into what the other things that he was calling me to do and other ways that he was calling me to care for others. And he was just very good in the way that he timed all of that too.
Yeah, it's always surprising because to us, it is surprising. I remind myself a lot. None of this is a surprise to God. He knew it all, but it seems like these events don't seem like they make a whole lot of sense or not what you expected. I'll share with everybody a little bit about the kidney situation.
Okay, so I just happened to be on Facebook and saw a need. Somebody had created a page that there was somebody that was in need of a kidney. It was actually a man from our church. And I didn't know him. I knew his brother. So I had this really weird sense to consider a donation, which, again, very surprising. Like, I am not a risk taker. I didn't go looking for any of that. And the fact that it was even impressed upon my heart shocked me, I think, more than anybody else. My father-in-law is a kidney transplant recipient, and so I know what an incredible blessing it's been to our family to still have him here because he got his kidney right after my husband and I got married almost 30 years ago. And so I did start just praying about it and had that hard conversation with my husband, and he was incredibly supportive, which he always is. And so I kind of started, I had reached out to the family. I did the initial testing and then, wait, hurry up and wait. And then it was determined that he had built up too many antibodies and that I was not a match. Like, his body would not accept my kidney. And so over the course of those few months of all the, the praying and the testing and the waiting, then I was actually shocked at how disappointed I was that it didn't work out. And I thought, God, why would you lead me to do something so big, so radical, and then it not work out? Like, I couldn't wrap my head around it. But I mean, there's nothing I could really do but let it go, right? So I let it go. But as I went back and kind of looked through the timeline in my journal, at the time I was like, I don't think God's done with this, but I had nothing to go on, just, an inkling. And so it was just a couple months after that. I think it was March or April that I got the news I wasn't a match. And then in June, my dad was diagnosed with congestive heart failure. Had I had that surgery, I never would have been able to care for my dad. And so a good friend, I'll never forget, she said to me, Joy, you see that God did not allow you to give your kidney because he knew he was going to be asking you to give of yourself in a very different way.
Mm.
And so I have found in my life that when God calls me to do big, unexpected things, I'm quicker to jump on board than at times with the obedience in the normal everyday things.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like God saying, okay, I'm calling you to do this
Mm.
in obedience to honor your dad, to care for your dad. And what I'm going to show you in this is going to prepare you. And then it was my dad passed in September. And then the following May or June, I was like just finishing up all of my responsibilities as the executor of his estate. And I came across a need for another man from our church who needed a kidney. Same process. It just didn't take me as long because I'd already prayed through it on the front end.
Mm-hmm.
And this time I was a match. And so that following November, I was able to donate a kidney to him, and he's doing great. And the experience has been amazing. But I look back and just see how God was protecting me and
Yeah.
caring for me and preparing me all in these, like, in the seemingly unrelated things of life, but
Yeah.
all part of the plan. And so it was all caregiving, but just in very different ways.
Definitely. And that's so amazing. And you said it's easier to respond in the big things because you know they're big. And so you're kind of like, okay, Lord, help me say yes, because this is what I know you're calling me to. But those
Yeah.
little things are easy to overlook. But I love how he orchestrated it all so that the big led to the seeming small initially that turned big in that whole process of losing your dad and then having to deal with the estate and all of those things, which is another thing to talk about, right? And then to
Yeah.
be able to walk into that need for this other gentleman. I mean, it's just amazing how God orchestrates it all. And I'm amazed over and over again at how much I think I know and how little I really do.
Yeah. Absolutely. But it's so cool to look back and be like, oh, yeah. I mean, you were like right there all along. It was nothing, like you said, nothing is a surprise to you, God.
Yeah.
You've got this and you know exactly what you're doing. Like, why do I doubt?
And he also knows kind of how to get us there. I mean, he knew that
Yeah.
if we just said, you're going to do this, you'd be like, oh, no, I'm not. It's that whole process of getting us to the yes that we know we need to have, but it's never a straight path for sure. So, well, share with us a favorite caregiving story or time with your dad as you were caring for him.
Oh, goodness. I think overall, just the fact that he and I were able to have one-on-one time that we had never had before. He was emotionally distant when I was growing up. There was a lot of history from his family of origin that contributed to that, but we weren't close then. My parents divorced when I was 25 and pregnant with my daughter. So it was after their divorce that I actually got to know my dad in a different way and in a way that I probably never would have had he and my mom stayed married, which was a weird blessing in the midst of all that. Um, as I was caregiving, I'm just in his house and one-on-one time that we just never had, and I probably wouldn't have if I wasn't in that position. Just being able to spend that time and to see him in his space. And when he wasn't feeling good, he was always wanting to get out in the garden and mess with the flowers. I just got to see him in a different light, and I really appreciated the opportunity to do that. A specific memory that I wouldn't necessarily call my favorite, but as I keep thinking about this question, it stands out to me is when he was in the hospital, that they were doing all the caretaking there and the sponge baths and whatever. And he always wore these dark, like black knee socks.
Yeah.
They pulled his knee socks off and he had like this really nasty thing on his toenail. Like it was super long and infected. And so they took care of that. But then when they got him home, like he still had to keep, dealing with it. And so I just remember there was one day that I literally just washed his feet.
Mm.
And it wasn't fun, but it was memorable in my mind because it was such a humbling moment for me. And I think for him
Yeah.
to sit in the chair and just let me wash his feet and rub lotion on his feet. And I don't know why that just
Right.
necessarily was very impactful for me, and just the opportunity to just serve like Jesus in that moment.
Yeah. It's such an amazing, it puts a whole different level of understanding of what Jesus did. And here,
Mm.
we are here in Lent anyway. And so just bringing that to life at a level that you hadn't experienced before, of just really serving to that point and knowing, he calls us to that. That's what we're supposed to do to that point. And it's not something that we think we should, right?
Yeah.
It's challenging. So it's a beautiful picture, but I think, and like you said, on his part, just being humble to a point of having to allow someone else to take care of a need like that. That's part of what walking them all the way home is to me, is just being so aware of how great their need is, that they're at this dependent level that they haven't been in since they were an infant, are being so dependent on other people. And I think that's what's so beautiful and so important about caregiving, is having the heart to be able to step into those moments and honor them by caring for them in a way that keeps their dignity and honors them. So what would be something that surprised you about caregiving, other than that you had to do it?
Well, um, to be honest, when this first all came about, I was angry
Mm.
because in my mind, it was another layer of grief over my parents' divorce, because I thought I shouldn't have to do this. I have kids at home. I have my own responsibilities. Like, my mom should be doing this.
Mm.
But this wasn't the reality, And so I didn't really have a choice, but I also probably wouldn't have wanted it to be another, I don't know. It's just kind of a weird thing. I was surprised by how much I ended up treasuring it,
Mm.
because I stepped into it like, I don't want to do this and I shouldn't have to do this. And then it was like, thank you, Lord, I get to do this.
Mhm.
He grew up in an alcoholic home. Obviously, his marriage to my mom wasn't great. They got divorced. And so I had this opportunity to just love him, maybe in a way that he'd never been loved before. I don't know.
Mhm.
But it just became really, really special to me. My kids ended up getting a closer relationship with him too, and
Right.
saw him in a different light as well. And so I was just surprised that I enjoyed it as much as I did, even though it was hard and kind of gross sometimes, like just
Yeah.
dealing with all the things. God's good that way.
Yeah.
And I do still to this day treasure the opportunity that I had to do that.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. I think it is one of those things that that's what's so beautiful about it, is how it just changes things. No matter what your childhood was, or no matter what your relationship with your parent was, I think it is interesting how when they become so dependent on us, how we see them differently, how we get that time that we would never have had. I remember my sister had my niece, and she and her husband invited my dad and I to go on vacation, and no, he wasn't diagnosed at that point, but we just had so much fun spending a week together, just having fun. And after it was over with, I thought, gosh, I haven't done that since I was a kid, just spent
Yes.
unlimited time with my dad and enjoyed that time, until caregiving came years later. That need became so huge. And again, the memories and the time that we spent together, we would never have spent together if it wasn't for that need. And so it is not easy. And there are lots of unfun parts, but there are also very beautiful parts whenever we take the time to notice them. And so that's what I like to encourage people to do, is stop and think, what is happening now? How are you enjoying the person that you're caring for? And when was the last time you had a good laugh? Those opportunities are there. We just have to make sure we see them.
Yeah. And God was good like I said, he died somewhat unexpectedly over the holiday weekend. But prior to that Thursday before he passed, we all got together to go out for I have twin boys, and we went to dinner for their 16th birthday.
Oh, fun.
And so we got to celebrate their 16th birthday. And it was the first time that my dad got to meet my daughter's then boyfriend, who is now her husband. And so, he just wanted to make sure, like, he's a good one, right?
That's
So just
good.
the fact that he got to meet Colin and we got to celebrate the boy's birthday, and then he passed just a few days later. Um, it was really tender and really special. I was really glad that we all got to experience that together.
So I know there's lots in this question. So what would be one thing you can offer to encourage people to live content, love well, or care without regrets?
Oh, all of the above. I think honestly, just what I try to do is be faithful to what God's putting in front of me today.
Mm.
The people, the situations, I tend to want to jump ahead and think like have everything figured out. It's
Right.
as if I could actually do that. But instead to just be faithful to what he's putting in front of me today so that I'm not missing those opportunities, that at the end of the day I have no regrets with how I cared for people, um, how I used the opportunities that God gave me. Obviously I don't do this perfectly, but the no regrets has been a motto for a good portion of my adult life. I want to get to the end of my life and know that I lived it to the fullest and that I don't have regrets. And so, yeah, I mean, that is kind of an all-encompassing question, and my answer is kind of broad, but um, yeah, because what he puts in front of me every day might be different. Just being faithful to that and not overlooking the small things that he puts in front of me because I'm looking for something bigger or better.
Mm.
Or just being obedient in those everyday things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a girl after my own heart who actually thinks about not having regrets. Because so many people they say that too. I don't really think of it that way. And it is so important. And it's not about being perfect. It's not about always doing it right. It's about making the adjustment so that you can forgive yourself, forgive others, and move forward and know that there's not a whole lot of things you're holding on to that you wish were different. And for me,
Right.
I think caregiving can be filled with those things if we don't really focus on that forgiveness piece and just being obedient the next time. He calls us each step, and it's okay if we fall because he's right there to help us up again. But at the same time, if we aren't really seeking to continue to have that confidence of no regrets, then we're going to do things without intention, which is going to
Right.
put us in a place where we're going to have regrets. Please,
Right.
that's my little sermon on it.
I also feel like, especially when it comes to a season of caregiving, is to remember that it's a season.
Yes.
And like mine was short. I know yours was a lot longer,
Yeah.
but it is a season. And I think it helps to put that in perspective. Like, this isn't going to be the reality forever and it's going to be hard, but it's a season. And so whatever is happening in this season is for a reason, and it's going to prepare us for what's coming in the next season.
Yeah, definitely. And that's what in your story of talking about being prepared to give your kidney and then not, is like those were little pieces of the seasons that kind of came together for this season that you've experienced with your dad. And then who knows what season's coming later of caregiving, but it's one of those things that it does help. I think one of the hardest things about seasons is that we on a calendar have a date that we know it's going to be over. And when we're caregiving, we don't have any idea. But those of you that live in the United States, we have seasons that don't really care. The weather's not paying attention. We were just talking about how crazy the weather's been, 80 one day and 30 the next. So,
Right.
there's
Get them all in one day.
we think we know what a season looks like. We don't even know what the actual weather seasons look like. So that's a
Right.
lot of what caregiving looks like. So our last question is, what would be one thing that you'd like to share with other caregivers, maybe in the beginning of the caregiving season or in the middle, that just encouragement for them?
Oh, goodness. I would say, I know it sounds cliche, but keep your eyes on Jesus. If he's called you into this, there's reason for it and there's purpose in it. So if you're looking beyond the circumstances in front of you and looking to him to give you wisdom and strength, you can't do caregiving without the strength of the Lord. That's for sure. Keep your eyes on him and allow him to do the work in you that he's wanting to do, even as you're giving. Allow him to fill you up as you're pouring out, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so good because keeping our eyes on him is where we get that strength, and he does pour. He is faithful to pour in, so we have some to pour out. When we don't stay close and we are trying to do it of our own, then the cup gets empty fast. And so
Yes,
we
sure
definitely
does.
need to spend that time getting filled up. I know, Joy, that you're an author. You've written some Bible studies. Tell us a little bit about where we could find your Bible studies or a little bit more about you.
My Bible studies are available on my website, joykotz.com. Also on Amazon. Um, as far as other things about me, I'm regularly teaching Bible study at my church, and I also speak for women's events and retreats and conferences and things. Excited about opportunity to continue sharing what God is doing in my life and what He's given me to reveal from His Word through teaching Bible studies and all those kinds of things. So more information about me at my website.
Very good. So joykotz.com. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing a little picture into your caregiving season.
Appreciate it. Glad to be here.
Thank you, listeners, for joining us today for Stories of Hope with Joy. A Season of Caring podcast has been created to share stories of hope for living content, loving well, and caring without regrets. If you have legal, financial, or medical questions, be sure to consult your local professionals and take heart in your season of caring.